Hello and welcome to the Transformative Principal podcast. This is Mike Caldwell, today's host, substituting for the legendary Jethro Jones. Today's guest is Marie Bordeleau. Marie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Happy to have you on here as one of our first podcasts or first podcast that I'm hosting in Jethro's absence. And so I'm excited to have a conversation with you today. Marie and I have just recently got to know each other over the last few months. She's a new mentor on Linked Leaders and has a wealth of experience and background similar to me in Catholic education, but also in public education as well. So let her share a little bit of her background, and then we'll dive into questions and see where this conversation goes. So Marie, again, happy to have you as one of my first guests here. So why don't you start with a little bit of your background and then maybe what led you to starting, is it called In the Arena Consultancy or something to that effect? Is that accurate?
It is. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Mike, for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today and to have this conversation with you. I think leadership, as we're talking about transformative leadership, life is kind of like life. It can lead to it's a twists and turns, and led me to some twists and turns where I needed to step away from the daily leadership of the school to take care of my family in a different way. And in doing that, though, I started to really think about engaging with a dream I've had for a long time, which is to finish a book I've started that was an offshoot of my dissertation at Creighton University. And then also, while my school leadership journey has been in Catholic education, um, I've also been in public school education as well at different moments in my career. And I think a lot of what my experience has been in both spaces is that there is a need for educators and educational leaders specifically to really get support in a very different way. I think that there's a lot of opportunities around instructional leadership and strategic planning, but there's not a lot about the carrying the burden of the daily grind of school leadership, which is something that unless you are doing it, it's hard to appreciate what that the weight that you carry every day and the skill sets you need to bring to the school every day, from instructional leader to CFO to chief psychologist to you know everything under the sun, HR, our expertise and the like. And so I think that's where my goal in working with school leaders in the arena is to really provide um, that helping hand to really manage those burdens. I'm working on publishing a book next month, and I'm absolutely thrilled about, called "The Dust and the Glory," because as school leaders, we end up kind of marred in the dust of the work, but there's also such glory in what we do every day when you have those sparkling moments. And I think about it's all inspired by Theodore Roosevelt's "In the Arena" quotation around it's really those that are in there fighting every day and working with the people that are in those arenas every day, and not necessarily the critics that are outside the arena, that we really need to be there for. And that's what I'm hoping to do through my coaching, the book I'm writing, and other things that I'm doing, and moments like this. So I really appreciate you asking me to be here. I'm absolutely thrilled. So thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. I think timely, a recent conversation I was having with a school leader just recently on Friday in a mentorship call. She was really struggling with obviously the pressure that you have as a school leader, and and also the criticism that she was trying to navigate both from one of her staff members, and also from from a set of parents from a recent issue. And as we were talking, I was looking over her shoulder, and I said, "Turn around and read that poster." And the poster was "In the Arena," the Theodore Roosevelt quote, which I think every school leader
Hmm.
should have on their wall as a reminder and a daily read. Like it's so true as a school leader that it's you that's in the arena doing the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. And I oftentimes read that, and or read that as a school leader as a reminder, like that criticism I'm getting are those people that are
Mhm.
in the grandstands watching. They don't understand all that it takes to be here in the daily battle, and so you have to kind of take some of that criticism from with a grain of salt. So I love the title of your consultancy in the arena. I think it's very applicable to the work of a school leader. Let's talk about your book. Tell me a little bit more about like so you've been in the process of writing that. Where is it? And yeah, what when are you releasing it?
Yeah, thank you. So, the process. So I've been writing it for a couple of years, and then I had time this fall, and so I just sat down and did the work to finish it because I had a lot to say. Because the school leadership is hard, and it is. I'm gonna just. I don't mean to. I think it was. I don't. I got so many times that people would say, "How do you do this job? It's terrible. Why would you want to do it?" And I loved it. I did love the work, but it was hard work, and that's part of the reason I liked it though was the challenge it presented every day. But I do think, as you're talking about those moments when you have the teacher that's upset with you because of something that, and then the parent that was criticizing you because of a discipline issue and everything else, it gets to be a lot to carry. And then when you're just trying to, and I think people often forget that the school leaders are human beings that have a lot to carry, and the job is incredibly complicated. And I think that's where my book is about how to manage that and really come out the other side and really lean into mentorship and accompaniment with others, because I think that's the only way you can do it. It's so easy to sit in your office or walking the hallways of your school and feel, even with all that's surrounding you, it can feel very isolating because everybody has an opinion, everybody thinks they understand your job, and that they can somehow do it better. If they were principal, this is what I would do if I was, and you're like, okay, sure. And they have zero idea that you have government mandates, the bosses from above, the parents, the teachers, all of it. And you have to somehow navigate all of those different shareholders. The board, let's not forget the lovely board, they're all very important, but it's complicated. And so that's what I was trying to do, is really talk about that and look at that and how to maybe speak to the reality of the job. Because when I was at my last school site, there were so many times I'd be looking for a book and none of them were really speaking to me. And I'll speak to specifically as a Catholic school leader too. So many of the books were really about being a spiritual leader or an academic instructional leader, or they're very specific. And I was just looking for something to say, talk to me about what my daily reality is. Let me, and I just couldn't find it. And so I decided to write it because I'm just that crazy. And really wanting to have the voice of the principal say, I feel heard, I feel seen, because I think it gets really hard from all of the different shareholders you have to manage. You often feel unseen because everyone's just pushing on you to do something. And so that's my hope there, because it is a very joyful job, or it can be, but you do have to go into it very carefully or it becomes not joyful. if you will.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna ask you to maybe pull out maybe one or two kind of key nuggets from your book that are really
Oh
like
my
if I was
gosh.
just if and I'm gonna share one first just to take
Mhm.
the heat off of you, to
Okay.
give you some time to think. But if you think
Okay.
about like the school leader that's listening to this, and maybe they're listening
Hmm.
to with the hopeful uh, goal of pulling something out of this conversation that we're having
Hmm.
that can actually help them today, help them tomorrow, help them
Hmm.
this week, not just theory. Think about like what are some of those nuggets that you learned in your 25 plus years as a school leader that
Hmm.
made the work for you more sustainable and also more joyful in the work.
Yep.
And I'll share one as you're thinking, like what I'll go back to that school leader I was just talking to, and she was really stressed over some upcoming parent meetings and an upcoming teacher, like some of those that were sharing, that had a axe to grind, or someone that was, challenging a decision, or whatever the case may be. And one of the things that helped me over time as a school leader is taking the pressure off of myself, saying it's not my job to get consensus on my decisions or to make you feel happy with my decisions, because I'm making decisions off of things that you don't completely understand. And I also somebody has to make the hard decision, even and they're not all going to be perfect and not all going to be agreed upon. What I feel like more as my job is to make sure that you feel heard when you have a disagreement or a question or want to discuss something. I can make you feel good, feel heard,
Hmm.
and take what you're telling me. And if it's something that's I can walk away with a new learning or a new perspective and apply it to future decisions, great. But my job isn't to make everyone happy and to make everybody agree on particular decisions, because that's just once you kind of take that away, like that's just not going to happen. You're not going to make everybody happy. um, but you can still kind of listen with an open ear and with empathy and to try to understand different perspectives, but know that at the end of the day you're the one in the arena that have to make difficult choices, and it's okay that not everybody agrees with certain decisions that you make. So
Hmm.
that's one that helped me get to a point where I didn't feel this like pressure to appease all the different people or entity, stakeholders that might have disagreement with me. So
Hmm.
I've taken the pressure off of you. What would you pull out from your book as maybe some of
Yep.
those key nuggets that somebody could take away
Yep.
from this conversation?
Uh, yeah, I think I'm going to take two steps back from where you started with yours, because I think you do have to get comfortable with people disagreeing with you, and you do have to get comfortable with knowing that you're talked about at the cocktail parties, you're talked about at the coffee shops, and positively and negatively, and you just got to go, okay, and get that, develop those calluses. But I think when you're in those moments of having to make those decisions that not everyone's going to agree with, or people are going to see differently, or not fully understand the scope, you do have to come at it from a place. I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek and knowing your why, and really having a strong sense of leading into your why. And whatever your school's mission statement is, religious based or not, or whatever the purpose or the vision everybody has, or the strategic plan you have for the school, you have to make sure you're leaning back into that. And you can say, look, this is how this is the decision because it leans into our our mission and our vision and our purpose. And this is the why of our school. And if and so that, and say, if you disagree with that, I am sorry, but that's, at the end of the day, that's the deal. Um, I think that's the first part, and then be okay with people just maybe seeing it differently, and being okay with that, knowing that you do have to um hold a lot more information than people fully realize. I still remember the person that someone was really upset because the teacher felt very attacked by teachers, some parents, excuse me. And she looks at me and she says, "Do you know what it's like to have people talking behind your back every day?" And I was just like, "No, I have no idea. None. I can't even begin." I had to stop myself from like doing exactly what you do, which is just laugh. Because it is hard, and it does take some time. But I think the other part too that I did not do, this is where I can say part of what I included in my book, that were learning lessons, because I was a young 28-year-old principal for my first year, and the average age of my staff at the time was 54, and so there was a little bit of a generational piece there. And I was full of the hubris of a 28-year-old that was given the keys to the school. And
Yeah.
I was very excited. I was full of purpose, full of vision. Um, but I think that's the other part, though, is when you're going through those things as a visionary leadership, a leader, an instructional leader, all of those things. I think the tortoise and the hare becomes a big part of it, and you've got to be okay with the tortoise. Small, steady progress is going to win that race. And I think I learned that early on, and I learned it and the hard way when I was trying to do too much, and I was overwhelming my team, because and doing things in a way that didn't honor the history. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think the other part too is leaning into, you know. you got to let people do what they're going to do. You can't control it all. I know I'm stealing Mel Robbins' lines, and so thank you to Mel Robbins. I'll give her full credit. And you have to go do what you have to do, and it's super important to always remember that, because that's part of being in the arena is letting them do what they're going to do, and then you just have to be ready to do what you have to do and do the things you can control and keep steadily moving on. But I think if those are some of the nuggets I think I would take away from somebody as you were talking about. Um, but
Yeah, the tortoise.
it is you do have to. Oh, go ahead.
I say the tortoise and the hare resonates with me. One of my mentors, when I, especially as an early years principal, I was same thing, just like go, 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 just kind of pushing faster than people were ready to be pushed. And so for me, it was walk before you, or crawl before you walk, walk before you run, and go slow to go fast were the
Hmm.
two kind of
Yep.
similar sentiments that resonated with me that I had to learn the hard way, because you might have all these great, what you think are great ideas, but great ideas are nothing without the people coming along. So you got to make sure that, one, are they really a great idea, and how can you make them better, and how do you get people to buy in and come along with you if it truly is a great idea. I want to shift gears a little bit. You've led through 9/11, '08 recession, COVID. You're here today. As you look back, and right now, I mean, there's crisis of other sorts that school leaders are dealing with. I mean, it's just a really
Hmm.
difficult time right now in education. So as you look back as a school leader, what did those crises teach you, and what you really believe holds a school together when everything feels fragile? I think that's where a lot of people feel right now.
Um, I think there's two things, and I'm going to be repeating myself the first one, which is during each of those crises, and other ones smaller throughout the time. It really is about mission and just holding on to what your purpose is and not getting caught up in the bigger picture of it. And I think that was so I was leading a Catholic school, tuition-based school, and during the recession. And our mission is to provide a Catholic education anyone wants one, for example. And so if I'm holding on to that, then really working with families and not just making it, if you can't pay, goodbye. If you can pay, say hello. And it's a black and white. There was a finesse and a need to work with families to honor our mission and who we wanted to be and protect people in their dignity during a very difficult time, for example. Um, but I think the other part too, though, is calm and steady, because you have to, everyone's going to come at you in panic. And if you think about the tornado, what is the calmest part of a hurricane, excuse me, the hurricane? And that's the center of the hurricane, where it's totally calm inside that center, and that's where you have to be, because everyone else is in the hurricane, panic stricken, and they need you to lead with a space of, let's hold on, it's going to be okay, let's take, and walk them through how we're going to manage this, and give them confidence to breathe again. And I think that can be really hard, but that's the job, that's the role. And I think that's the when I think about what I'm trying to do in my coaching or through my book, with that idea of accompaniment becomes super important, because you have to be that person in the middle, just like a parent of a teenager, or just a parent in general. You have to be the calm for them, you have to be the calm for all of your shareholders. And when you're doing that, though, you need to make sure you have someone that's going to help keep your calm there too. So, and having that person is going to be super important. But I think that's where, through all of those different moments, and others that are to come, you do have um, to do that. But I think the other part too, though, is during those spaces of calm, I want to encourage everybody, because it can be really hard and scary to lead during big moments, or complicated moments like today, which no matter what decision you're going to make, someone's going to think that you're woke, or you're whatever political orientation they're going to kind of pull, or whatever it's going to be, they'll pull something out at you. Um, and I think that's where you need to really make sure that the why is always there at the heart and the center of it. And I think you need to also make sure you're showing some courageous leadership. And thinking creatively, and with ingenuity, self-reflection, and this is going to sound like a weird one, but indifference. Like, and I think about indifference as where it's not indifference about, like Elie Wiesel would have explained it in his talking of the Holocaust, which is like the opposite of hate, but indifference to how we get to an endpoint and being comfortable with lots of different ways to get to where we need to go and not be so tied to a point, and but being heroic enough and humble enough to allow all of the different solutions to emerge and not fight so hard for whatever you've decided a solution could be. So, but it's hard, and I do think though you do need to make sure that there's mentors, that you have partners, um, colleagues, whatever name you want to call them, to really be there with you, because I think if as leaders, and if you especially transformational leaders, you do need people that are going to be there by your side, because it does take a lot of courage and a lot of fortitude to show up and say and to be that change agent. It's not an easy thing.
Yeah, without a doubt. I remember reading somewhere where you talked about, I think you said something like burnout isn't a personal failure, but a systems problem,
Hmm.
if I recall.
Hmm.
What systems or expectations do you think most often push school leaders towards burnout? And what do you think needs to
Oh,
change if we want leaders to stay for the long haul?
yeah. I think and I think sometimes it's the same things as teachers, that just too much is asked of them. I don't think when um, uh, so often the those that are above you, whether it be at a diocese or a county
District?
office or a district office, it becomes very transactional and a top down. There's not a give and take, and there's not, the only time you often hear from them is if something is wrong or they expect you to implement something. And I think that's where the systems break down, is there are so many models out there for how to make sure that the principals are taken care of and the leaders are taken care of. Because, like, so when I was so the job, I think the job of principal is to make sure that other adults in the building are taken care of so they can take care of the kids. And I think the job above us would be to make sure the principals are taken care of so they have what it takes to take care of the people in the classrooms. And that's the part that gets broke. The bridge there is broken, in my humble.
Servant leadership, right?
Yes, thank you. You beat me to the punchline. Absolutely, and that's where I think that gets forgotten. It's more, and because I don't remember the last time I ever went to a principal meeting, and it felt like there was true support, accompaniment, and being heard. I wish I could be more positive on that one, but that it's one I actually feel very strongly about. In that, I think there's so much asked of that of principals and school leaders, and what and even the parents, I'll lean in hard in on the parents too on this one. I think that there's such a taken for granted notion, and I think that's where the system could do a little bit better job of setting them up for success. Because if you think about the number of hats a school leader has to wear, I started naming a few, but there was more. um, it's a lot, and half the time, I don't think the training we're supposed to get, working on through the education at the university level, actually fully prepare anybody for what comes ahead. I would also technically say that about some of the teacher programs, though, because I think there's only so much you can be trained on until you actually live it. But I do think that's where really looking at creating systems that create sustainability, is big, because it's right now, I don't think, if you just look at the number of educators that are leaving the profession, and then school leaders are even worse. It's not good, and it's not going to make for academic excellence in our schools that we need so desperately, in 2025 and
Absolutely.
beyond.
I want to jump to something and this is getting more to the maybe the Catholic leadership side, but I think there's
Okay.
definitely some application here, regardless of kind of what model and kind of school you're in.
Mhm.
But you talked to, I think you would say Ignatian spirituality plays a big role in your coaching work. And
Hmm.
a lot of listeners might not know what I'm talking about there. So, but when you talk about things like discernment and reflection and the examine and how they shape the
Hmm.
way you approach leadership and coaching principles, can you talk a little bit about what all of that means? What are you talking about when you say discernment, reflection, and the examine? And
Yeah.
how could that apply, more broadly outside of the Catholic education space?
Yeah, I think regardless of where you're whatever type of school you're leading at, discernment and self-reflection needs to be part of your normal practice. You have to remember to step away and take a few minutes. Either that's, whether that's be at a Catholic school and you go into the chapel and just have a few minutes of peace. If it's at 5 o'clock after dinner and you're walking the dogs, whatever it might be, you need to find space to just be quiet. And I say that place of, again, I learn more from my mistakes than my successes, fortunately or
Don't
unfortunately.
we
And
all?
that's where,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
thank you for validating that. But I do think, though, that it's so easy to rush through because you're like, I have the answer, I have lots to do, let's go, let's go, let's go. And I think it's important to slow down because when I do that, inevitably a more effective solution will emerge than the one I'd originally wanted to just zip line to really quickly. And um and and I think that's where and also in doing, like, when you talk about that examine too, that can be part of that discernment and that slowing down. And it you take in that, it asks you to like look at what I did well, what I didn't do well and I could do better, but also what to be grateful for. And I think it's really important because it's our the job of a school leader is to be, it can just be summed up in one line: be the problem solver. And that makes it so all the hard stuff gets thrown at you and you don't get the moments of of joy or success or the wins that happen in your school because you're busy in your office dealing with the student that said, like, was bullying another student while everyone else was down at the rally celebrating the school. And that you're just like, man, I missed it. I missed the good stuff. And that's where you do have to take a moment and like register the gratitude, register the wins, and also and do the same thing for your team, because I think it's easy to go into what do I have to fix as well. And that's all part of the examine, the self-reflection, and the discernment around what's really happening, and so that you get the full picture and not just the emotional moment that happens at some point during your day.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just at a 2-day kind of workshop in this program that I just started or just was accepted, and it's a whole year-long program. And one of the things that I took away from that was this concept or idea. I don't think it's novel, but it was kind of a aha for me. But the idea between a bat being, having a battery versus a power plant, and when I
Hmm.
I so often, really felt it was more for me, it was the battery. You grind, work all day, you get home, hopefully catch your breath, sleep for as many hours as you can sleep with depending things that keep you up at night and stuff like that. And then you wake up the next morning and you do it all over again. And each day you're not really replenishing that battery. If you're just kind of relying on the day to day, and then and sleep as kind of your main replenishment, if you will, right? Like, you start 100% maybe at the beginning of the week, maybe. By Tuesday,
Hmm.
you're starting Tuesday at maybe 80%, and then so on and so forth. And then the week you're just draining your battery versus kind of this power plant mentality. And it gets to a little bit of what you're saying is thinking about kind of the four pieces that really boost your battery or boost your power. One being sleep and how important sleep is for you, and like what are you doing to maximize your sleep before you go to sleep, and setting yourself up for the maximum sleep so you're getting hopefully 7 to plus hours of sleep, right? Your nutrition, for me, like water intake and eating right, like it's a big part of your power plant. Movement, what you're doing for exercise to take care of yourself to really boost. I know for me, like when I go get on a bike for 30 minutes or whatever, like the way I feel after that is just incredible. But then they also, whether you call it meditation or reflection or, whatever, but like taking the time for just allowing your mind to rest and to pause, whether that's a guided meditation or just like go outside and soak up the sun for 5 minutes and just be in present. But all four of those things really being part of your power plant, and like what are you doing to kind of rejuvenate your battery, so to speak, as opposed to just kind of grinding it down day in, day out. So that's what kind of resonates when you talk a little bit about the
hmm
reflection, discernment, and examine.
hmm Yeah, I also think the word that kept coming to mind as you were talking were boundaries, and it really becomes important to set some boundaries around and be an intention and a sense of intentionality around how things are done, because it's really easy to get pulled into the moment, the crisis that someone throws at you that doesn't necessarily have to be a crisis. And you can say that can wait till Monday and it's okay and put it down. If it's 3:30 on a Friday afternoon, and making sure you balance those out because it is and I say this because I want to say to all the listeners that I think sometimes you hear all these things, you want to roll your eyes and say, "Do you know what's on my to-do list? Do you know what my family is expecting me? Do you know what the kids are expecting? You know, all those things." And I think it's fair to that because it is really hard and it can be overwhelming when everything is getting thrown at you. But I do think that's where what being intentional and creating systems for yourself, and setting boundaries for yourself are super important. And it can be as easy. And the other part too that I think is helpful in this too is and I heard that this is what like Warren Buffett did, and who doesn't want to be Warren Buffett in some form or fashion. Is he doesn't have a to-do list. He has a calendar. And so he puts everything, he schedules time for everything. And then there's a differentiation between the seeds and the weeds and making sure that more time is put into seeds, which are growth oriented activities rather than weeds that are these got to get done, but they don't support growth of the school. And I think that goes back to that whole idea of intentionality, whatever that looks like to you, and setting those boundaries too, though, with people. I think it can be very meaningful when you're trying to manage that power plant that you talk about, which I think is a great way to put that. I might steal that sometime if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'm going to steal the seeds and weeds. I haven't heard that one from on Buffett, so that's good stuff. Well, as we round up, maybe last question. As you look
Yeah.
back now with your 25 plus years experience, a book in the making or almost finished, your coaching business,
Yeah.
um, what do you wish someone had told you before you became a principal?
Um, I think not to those boundaries. I didn't set the good boundaries early on in terms of trying to be like that something to everybody and feeling like if I wasn't available or trying to fix the problem or what wasn't, somehow that was what was important, and realizing that need I didn't embrace the need for rest and rejuvenation and setting of those limitations early on. And I think I would have been much more successful much sooner, if I had done that because I had to learn not to let everyone else's stuff become my stuff, um, and just and stay the course, and be that slow and steady person and be comfortable with that and know that I was on mission because
Yeah.
that can be really
Well,
hard because people like to throw those shiny gold balls at you and distract you, and it's those are powerful magnets, or they can be if you're not careful.
yeah, absolutely. Well, the last question, I hope to
I'm ready.
paraphrase the Jethro closing question is for you, Marie. What does it mean
hmm
to be a transformative principal?
Oh my gosh, what does it mean?
What does it mean for you?
I think, yeah, I think for me, it means being someone that transforms an individual life. I think about the individual kiddo who looks back and said, Dr. Bordeleau had a transformational moment for me. A teacher who I can say I transformed something for them. Um, I think those are the moments that really resonate with me and make it so like that arena is so joy filled. And I think when you're looking at that from the individual transformation, that becomes the transformation within this in the school building. Because I think to a certain extent, it's not that it's easy, but um, it's easy to not look beyond the individuals and look at the big transformational, get the new program, get the new building, and all of this, and transform it. I think that can be those can be very rewarding, but when you really look at why we get into this work, it's the individual that the family that needed help because their 2-year-old was suffering with leukemia. The family that didn't know how they were going to support their student that just got diagnosed with autism. The teacher that was struggling because their husband was sick at home and they needed to work. They were struggling. You know, all those things that you bring them into those moments of help and support and accompaniment are the ones that I think really make it so when you look back, you can say I was transformative as a leader in those schools. And that's what like warm I guess warms my heart or brings a big smile to my face or that sense of joy is to think about those individuals as a rule of them.
Yeah, awesome. Absolutely. Well, Marie, thank you for your time today. One last plug, and I'll put it in the show notes for your upcoming book that's going to be released sometime, maybe March, the next month or so.
March 26th is the date. Yeah, I'm waiting. I get the cover in the next few days, and I'm very excited.
Awesome.
It's kind
Very
of
exciting.
becoming very real. So yeah, thank you for having me on today. This was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. I
The
appreciate
Dust and
it.
the Glory, Finding God in the Chaos of Catholic School Leadership is the title of the book. And again, we'll
Yeah.
put your website and your contact information in the show notes so that when people want to reach out to you directly, great. And you can also find Marie on linkleaders.com as one of our mentors. So a lot of ways to contact her. Marie,
Thank
thanks
you.
again. Appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
all right. And everybody else, we'll see you at the next show. Thanks for joining us.